welcome to the first ever Crew Call, episode number 1. Matt Devlin with Sherm, Jonesy, Leo, Jack, and E. Always great to see everyone. I know we've all been connecting with one another over the course of the last couple of weeks. We all want to remind everybody to continue to social distance and stay inside, unless, of course, you're Jack, when you can be in Florida and be right outside, but he's staying away from everybody, and that's what you want to do during these times. And we also want to thank, obviously, everybody out on the front lines. With that being said, I want to start it off by kind of going around the room here. Sherm, great to see you, buddy.
Matty D, gentlemen, good to see you all. You're all looking a bit calm and a bit cooler than I remember seeing you guys.
How about this, Sherm? I mean, the only one that shows up with a collared shirt is E. Smith.
How bad is that? Like, Come on. You know he's not dressed like that every day.
I won't show you what's on the bottom.
We don't want to see.
No.
Can we edit that out? Jack, how are things down in Florida?
Well, by the way, Eric Smith's the only guy that ever showed up at my golf club, and he wore his hat.
I'm sorry.
And he got yelled at the club. So, big time E. Smith. He's actually wearing a collared shirt. I'm proud of him.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. I remember that. I almost got booted off your private course.
and Jonesy's already shushing people like the principal that he is.
I got people coming into the house, man. I'm sorry. This is the way we work, right? This is the times that we're in, and it'll be nice when we can all get back together and congregate at the back of the plane or at the back of the media room, and the world gets healthy again.
Yeah. And Leo, I know he's down in Florida and keeps us up to date with the daily going-ons with the dogs and the cat. And
I'm not responsible for any animals that you may see, or if you see anything in the mirrors behind me, I'm sorry.
All right, so here we go. I really, it's a lot of fun, obviously, for all of us to go back over and think back to the 2019 postseason. And, here we are talking about the second round matchup against the Philadelphia 76ers for the Toronto Raptors, which was just an epic battle. And when you think, Sherm, about that Game 7, what comes to mind to you?
Well, obviously, we're all going to talk about the shot, but, I just remember the series, having those moments where it looked like it was a 1984 Eastern Conference playoff game where it was just grimy, it was physical, it was tough. The whistles weren't going. And to me, Game 7 had a bit of that feel because both teams did not shoot the ball particularly well. It came down to the other things that you had to do to get the job done. And in a game where the Raptors, you think about it, they won the first quarter, but went on to lose the next 3 quarters. And it's not like these were 35 to 30 type of quarters. These were like 25 to 24, 18 to 13 in the first quarter. It was just that physical kind of basketball. So, and to me, obviously, to see that shot and to see what happened and to be in the arena to experience it beyond being a broadcaster for the team, just as a person who grew up in Toronto and understands what basketball means to this city and this country, was absolutely phenomenal.
Jacko?
Well, it's the single most intense game I've ever been involved with in my time as a broadcaster in the NBA. And I concur with what Sherm said. To me, it was just remarkable how both teams played. I think both teams deserve so much credit for the effort that they put in and the intensity. It was almost one of those games. It's a shame someone had to lose. Thank God Philadelphia did lose. But the reality is, I think both teams gave championship effort, and that's all you ever want. And Jonesy, you and I did that game on the radio that afternoon, and I think we constantly kept looking at each other and talking about it, that the intensity in the building, and more importantly, the 10 guys on the floor and the 3 referees. I mean, it was just incredibly a difficult game to ref and an incredibly difficult game to play in.
Jack, I think, when you talk about too bad somebody had to lose, I thought both teams showed their mettle, especially going down the stretch. There was a time when, Toronto had a little bit of a lead and to Sherm's point about the old school nature of it, a basket was so important. It was like a goal in hockey. Like, the other team, like, where are they going to get another one? How do they manufacture another one? And Toronto has a bit of a lead, and it looks like, they might be able to ride it home. And all of a sudden, Jimmy Butler makes a couple of big plays. There's a steal. There's a driving layup. And the other part of me as a longtime Torontonian, and maybe Leo, you can relate to this, when you think about the heartbreak in Toronto over the course of all these years, not just with basketball, but with the Leafs and the Argos and the early years of the Blue Jays getting close and not getting over the hump. I had this feeling in the building that there were some Toronto people that were worried that Toronto could not have nice things. This was going to end the wrong way for them. And I think in that regard, a lot of people, there was some trepidation there. But, Jack, to your point about the intensity, it probably was the single most intense game with a sense of urgency that I'd ever been involved in. And you and I, as you said, we took our headsets off many times over the course of commercials and said, wow, can you believe this game? And it's funny, the Raptors won the title, guys, but I think what people will remember most about the playoffs is Game 7 against Philly and the Kawhi shot.
Leo, I know it was both of us on the Sportsnet side, along with Eric doing sidelines, and of course Sherm was on the perch. And you think back to that, a Game 7 and the series as a whole. What were your thoughts about the series heading into that Game 7 and then also Game 7?
Both teams thought they could win. And Philadelphia was a team that believed that they could win an NBA championship. They could beat Toronto, and they felt they could beat Milwaukee and get to the NBA Finals. So these were two teams that were 100% in on this game. And I agree with what Jonesy kind of said earlier. There was a lot of angst in the building, right? People were just going, can this happen? And everything everybody's saying, the intensity, the storylines of this game, the adjustments that were made during the course of the series, there were so many things that if you're an NBA guy, you're loving the series from start to finish. And think about this, that in the history of the NBA, how many games have been played? There's never been a Game 7 winning shot, right? There's never been that. And, we all experienced that. And the one thing I'll never forget, Maddie, when that last sequence from Kawhi getting that ball till that ball finally bouncing in, it seemed like it was a half an hour, right? Yeah. And you could feel it in that crowd. You could feel it. And it wasn't just the Raptors and this game. It was the Leafs, as Jonesy said. It was all the things that have ever happened in Toronto that were bad. You could feel it all. And then when that shot finally dropped, it's like this big exhale and joy. And I'll never forget that. I just feel it was almost like you see those preachers on TV, evil spirits, be gone. And all of a sudden, everything was good again.
Wow. Leo, in terms of that whole thing, they always say in the playoffs, Pat Riley's line was, there's no winning and losing in the playoffs. There's misery and relief. Was that not the biggest relief for Toronto fans?
100%. 100%. That's why I can't think of another time where I felt so much joy in the city of Toronto. The streets, people were out in the streets. Everybody was just so happy about what was happening. And I'll tell you another thing I'll share with you guys. After and everybody's milling around, every single Raptor player or management, Masai, Bobby Webster, everybody that I encountered, there was one feeling. We're beating Milwaukee. We're winning this whole thing. And that was the feeling after that game.
And, it's interesting. I know, Leo, you and I talked about this after the game because of where we sat. It was after the second bouncer. We actually thought that the ball was going to go through. We both talked about that later. And I know, you were right there by that basket. And just your insight when you think about that series, which was just a grinded out series. And then, of course, that Game 7 game winner, 92-90.
I didn't want to cut Leo off as he was talking about the fans. I was waiting to jump in there because I think maybe Sherm might be the only other one that can kind of speak to it in terms of not having headset on, sitting up in the perch with Brad and with Alvin. But I was down on the floor, as you said, Maddie, in that corner, in the VOM right nearest to the Raptors bench. And so you're sort of amongst the fans. And other than a couple little earbuds in so that we can talk back and forth with our producer and director and whatever else and all the guys in the truck, you're kind of amongst the fans. So you're hearing it all, and you're feeding off that energy, that noise. And, Leo, you're bang on. That emotion that was in the building, the sense of doubt, but the sense of exuberance as well. It was all hanging by a thread the entire game, let alone in those seconds when the ball was bouncing off the rim. And I'll fast forward for a second because I'm sure we're going to do some other shows coming down the road in the next couple of weeks. But the only other time that I experienced anything like that was in Game 5 in the finals when about 90 seconds left and people felt, holy blank, we're about to win the championship on our home floor, and that went away. And the only other time I can reference it is to then rewind back to Game 7 where it was, oh, my God, we're about to win this game. Oh, my God, we're about to go to the conference finals again. And when that thing bounce, and if you see some of the still shots of the shot, some of the wider angles, I've found myself, and I'm actually looking up because I can't see anything because everybody from the players to the people on the floor in the stands, they're all standing up. And at 5'9", I'm blocked out, so I'm actually watching the scoreboard and watching the big screen, trying to see if this shot's going to fall. And then in the pandemonium, trying to fight my way through the crowd and through the players to get onto the floor to do the postgame, and just sheer bedlam, Matty, inside the arena.
Yeah, it's something that Jonesy and Leo touched upon, and I think all of us certainly had a sense of it based upon the history. This is my 12th season calling Raptor games, and obviously day oneers and 22 years, Jack and, Jonesy, you, Leo, Eric, and then of course Sherm, not only playing for Canada basketball, but being in the basketball community for the length of time that you have. You never got a sense whatsoever from the players. Everybody wanted to talk about 2001 and Vince and the shot. That was a storyline for us and for the fans. Yeah. But for the players, they didn't. This team, in my opinion, they lived in every moment. They did not think about a minute from now or what just happened 2 minutes ago. It was all dialed into what was happening today and right now. But that didn't, by the way, mean that everybody else was thinking about Vince in 2001.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Doesn't that come from the leadership on this team, though? With Masai making that trade, with Nick, the way he always talks about finding chemistry and flow in a game, with Kawhi Leonard, who was the epitome of okay, move on to the next play. That's a great point, and I think it comes from some of the top cats involved with the team and the leadership from within.
And while it wasn't real to anybody involved with the Raptors, in fact, if you talk to anybody, they're like, they dismiss it, and rightfully so. But it was real for basketball fans in Toronto. And I guess, Jack, start with you on this one.
No, I agree with you, Matt. And Jonesy, you were bang on about that. I think with the deal to get Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green, and things changed immediately in training camp that year in Vancouver. And you could just see how those two guys went about their work and their experience and their championship experiences, that when you got into postseason, these guys had a different way about them, how they carried themselves in terms of how it permeated throughout the team. And there was just an inner calm. And I go back to Game 4 of Philadelphia, which was an amazingly challenging, daunting task, having to win that game. And when they won that game, they did what you had to do. They secured home court back. And then winning Game 5, no matter what happened in Game 6, they now had home court. And this was just a different Raptor team than the one we had seen. And I think a big part of that was those two guys coming from San Antonio, and how calm and how confident and how astute Nick Nurse is as a coach. I think, and I said this all along, Steve Clifford, Brett Brown, Mike Budenholzer, Steve Kerr, all really good coaches, but in each series, at some point in time, he outflanked and outmaneuvered each one.
I think what's maybe stood out as well for me, guys, to your point as well, Jack and Jonesy, the way that not just the leadership of the team maybe, but the buy-in from everybody on the roster as well in terms of, we always say the old line of there's one thing between knowing your role, there's another thing between accepting your role. And I think a lot of guys not only knew their roles, but they accepted it. You think of a guy now in this season, in Fred VanVleet, how important he has become for this team for present and future. And I think a lot of that groundwork was laid in the postseason last year when, he's coming off the bench, but then he's starting in second halves. And Danny Green recognizing I might be starting games, but I might not be starting the second half. Or, Serge Ibaka coming off the bench, and how big was he in the Game 7 and the performance that he put in when the bench had struggled so mightily in that series. So while everybody knew that maybe things were going through Kawhi and he was no doubt the lead dog, it was the buy-in from everybody else that accepted their roles for the greater good to get the Raptors not only through that series, but ultimately to the championship as well.
Sherm, I was going to say, I think, and Eric just brought this up, and I think lost in everything because of the shot, and understandably so, was the performance in Game 7 of Serge Ibaka and what he was able to bring to that team. And when you go inside, and Jack, you touch upon it, Jonesy, Sherm, we've all talked about this so many different times before we got on Zoom, over the course of the last 365, that, Nick Nurse did a brilliant job of managing that roster and finding out ways to match Philadelphia. But Serge was a key piece to that, Sherm.
Oh, no question about it. And you think about Nick Nurse, as his time as a head coach, we're used to him playing 8, 9, 10 guys in a game. That's kind of been his MO. If you provide, what you're supposed to do on the floor, he's willing and he's going to give you the minutes. And I thought to see Nick Nurse go to 7 guys in his rotation in that game, and Serge stepped up in a huge way. Remember, Serge had been the guy with Marc Gasol in, out of the lineup, and he tried that big lineup late in the season when everyone was finally healthy. And he got some good results, put it in his back pocket, and brought it out again in this series. And Serge, to me, was a huge part, and his 17 points were big off the bench. In a game when you're only scoring 92 points, in a game when you're shooting under 40%, and in a game where your defense is going to have to get it done, Serge was huge, both defensively and offensively. And you're right, guys, that shot was amazing. But lost in the shuffle is the job that Serge did in that game to help his team get over the hump.
I'm not a big believer in the plus-minus, but Serge was a plus 22 in that game, better than any other Raptor. And it just showed what he and Fred did off the bench and how important they were. And I think we got a sense of that in Game 4, as we talked about, with the 2 bigs playing together, when he went with Mark and Serge. And remember, and I watched that game just the other night, Leo, you talked about it in the game, the fact that Pascal was coming off that calf injury. And we weren't sure if he was going to play. And this gave Nick, as to Sherm's point, Nick always says, we got 8 starters, there's only 5 spots. So guys rotating through and him looking for stuff and finding, the combination of Mark and Serge and allowing them to play together, and then putting it in his back pocket for Game 7, I think that was huge.
Hey, Leo, when you and I have talked about this before and get everybody's perspective here as we kind of wind down here, episode number 1 of Crew Call. But you go back, and of all 4 series, to me, the Philadelphia 76ers series was the toughest for the Raptors. The most was on the line. Jimmy Butler's future, Kawhi's future, everybody went all in. To me, Leo, the toughest series that the Raptors had?
Yeah. And again, I think it's a series that both teams absolutely believed they could win the series. And, also you think, again, that adjustment everybody's talking about, that was the biggest move in the whole series. Philadelphia's matchups were killing the Raptors. They were taking a lot of guys out of their games, right? They weren't themselves. And that's one of the things I said going forward, if you remember, that the Milwaukee series is going to be normal again, because even though Milwaukee has size, their matchups are normal, right? And Philadelphia wasn't normal. There was so much length there. So when they finally made that adjustment to go big, that really did alter the outcome of the series, in my opinion. And it was such a big finish to that I think that boost you get out of it. And, everybody says you don't win without a little luck, right, guys? Everybody knows that, whether it's health, a shot, you don't win without luck. But that last shot, everybody is seeing Kawhi take that shot to win. Short corner, that dribble in that short corner. We've seen it before. And there was nothing lucky about that shot because he planned everything on that shot. Even a guy that shoots a flat trajectory, that shot had more arc than any shot he'd take.
No doubt.
And you know what? I tell kids all the time, Jonesy, Sherm, you guys know this as players, that all you want to do every time you shoot the ball is give it a chance.
Yeah.
Give it a chance. And arc and backspin gives it a chance, and Kawhi put it there. And when that first bounce went up, I said, hey, we got a chance. And you could even hear it on broadcast. I was like laughing like a little kid when that ball, as it was happening, because I was feeling like this is good with every bounce. So there were so many great things, but without a doubt, this was I think this is a series that everybody's going to remember.
Jacko, your perspective on that?
Well, I totally agree with what Leo said there, and it's bang on about Kawhi. And, the great ones, they put the time in, and when that moment comes, they know it's their moment, and they're ready to rise to the occasion and meet the moment. And just going back one step, I'll never forget when the Raptors acquired Serge Ibaka, and Rex Kalamian, who's now with the Clippers, was an assistant with the Raptors, and he made an interesting point about Serge Ibaka. He said, watch him. He's better late in games.
Yes.
He's better late in series. And it's interesting. Like, I really didn't really know what he meant. But then every day you're around Serge Ibaka and you watch him, he's better when the game's on the line. And he's better, and we've learned this now in the playoffs, he's so much better when later in the series. And when you look last year at each series, he was a huge part of it. And then Norm Powell joined the party, as well as Fred VanVleet, as we saw during the playoffs as well. But none of that happens unless you have a guy like Kawhi Leonard with some heroic efforts in Game 4 at Philly, and then again that big shot in Game 7 against Philadelphia. It was just remarkable.
It really was. We can go on forever, as all six of us know. But this is the first ever episode of Crew Call, and I'm sure we will do this again. It's always great seeing everyone. The perspectives on that series are outstanding. And as I mentioned, all of us could talk probably for another 4 or 5 hours and go even deeper into it. So I would imagine we'll do this again. Great seeing all of you. I know we text and call and all that other stuff, and make sure everybody keeps doing that to those that are around, the friends and family. And thank you, obviously, to all those working every minute of every single day on the front lines. Quick departing words, guys. Less than a minute to go. See you guys later. Thumbs up for everybody out there working hard for us. Thank you very much.
Be strong.
Stay safe.
Thumbs up. Be safe, everybody.
Be safe.